Hello, I'm Henry Keane, we are UATV and you're welcome to the weekly wrap-up. Today in the episode, blows to Russia's war logistics, Azot plant rocked by blast, Luhansk fuel goes up in flames. Putin sends new threats to West from Valdai stage. Ukraine's delegation pushes new arms deal. Another day, another routine, how they call it, incident deep in Russia. Explosions, fires, fuel problems. At this rate, even record distances offer no actual guarantee of quiet. The war effort is running hot indeed, but not exactly in the way the Kremlin hoped for it. An evening in the Perm region of Russia was shaken quite literally by some powerful explosions at the chemical plant Azot in Berezhniki. The facility sits a good 1,700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Plant officials stated that the cause was, I quote, production refrigerator explosion, and assured the public that the situation is normal with no danger to the city whatsoever. Still on social media, people are talking about what happened. Drone attacks and the fire. This plant is one of Russia's largest producers of double-purpose products, both for agriculture and for explosives production. In 2024, the plant reached record production level over 2.3 million tons. Today, in a temporarily occupied Luhansk, gas stations and Russian military vehicles refueling there just caught fire. All of a sudden, Russian military were, as usual, stealing fuel from civilians they claim to liberate there. This incident fits a wider pattern. Actually, in September, Russian media reported a series of drone strikes forced 4 oil refineries, major ones, to hold operations completely in Russia, knocking out roughly a quarter of Russia's oil total production. Together, the attack on fuel sites and refineries are hitting both local logistics and the broader fuel supply chain that Russia relies on for military operations. As of September 28th, about 38% of country's primary oil processing units were offline. Overall available capacity for producing gasoline and diesel fuel dropped by 6% in August alone and plunged literally by 18% in September. The disruption has already caused significant domestic shortages. Fuel supply on the Russian market has reportedly fallen by as much as 20% of total consumption, leading to growing pressure to gas stations and concerns over the stability of the country's energy sector in total. When victories on the battlefield are out of reach, Putin seeks to winning on paper and, of course, in speeches. Well, every year, the Russian dictator takes the stage at the Valdai Discussion Club, a cozy gathering of Kremlin officials, loyal academics, and hand-picked foreign guests, all pretending to debate global issues. On October 2nd, he was back at it again, Putin, delivering another round of his illusions grandeur statements, heavy on rhetoric, light on facts. The Russian dictator used the forum as a platform to spread new threats against Europe and the United States, aimed at deterring the West from responding to Russia's hostile actions and from further supporting Ukraine, of course, the Institute for the Study of War reports. Firstly, Putin has claimed that Russian forces have taken control of Kupiansk, Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka, stating they now hold 2/3 of Kupiansk and have entered several other major cities. But on the ground, the picture looks quite different. Ukrainian forces are actively clearing Russian troops out of Kupiansk, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy confirms. According to the Institute Study of War and Deep State, as of October 2nd, Russian forces control only 14% of the city, showing that Putin's claims are, once again, far from reality.
I thought he would get this thing over with. He should have had that war done in a week. And I said to him, you don't look good. You're 4 years fighting a war that should have taken a week. Are you a paper tiger?
Putin has finally found time to respond to it.
I've said it before, Russia has been fighting not the Ukrainian armed forces or Ukraine itself all these years, but practically the entire NATO bloc. And if we're fighting the whole of NATO, yet still moving forward, advancing, and feeling confident, and they turn out to be a paper tiger, then what does that say about NATO itself? What are they, really? Never mind that. The most important thing is that we remain confident in ourselves. And we are confident. Without any exaggeration, this is not hyperbole, not an overstatement, and not bragging. I believe that, as of today, the Russian army is the most capable fighting force.
Putin stated that Russia is closely monitoring the, I quote, militarization of Europe, and is listening carefully to Germany's claims that its armed forces should become the most powerful in Europe. Putin claimed that no one doubts Russia's response to Europe's militarization, and that won't take long. He also threatened that Russia is assessing whether Europe's efforts are just talk or whether Russia could take countermeasures, ones that will be very convincing. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz met in Copenhagen. They met to discuss strengthening Ukraine's air defense, including the delivery of Patriot missile systems and ammo for it. Zelenskyy highlighted Germany's crucial support in helping Ukraine defend itself. They also talked about the Pearl initiative, using frozen Russian assets for Ukraine's protection and recovery and security guarantees. And a Ukrainian delegation from the National Security and Defense Council and the Ministry of Defense visited the United States to continue the cooperation agreement between the two countries' leaders. Discussions with the U.S. Department of Defense and Congress focused on agreement to purchase Ukrainian drones, joint defense projects, and further deliveries of American weapons under the Pearl initiative. More details in our full reportage for you.
The key task of the negotiations in the U.S. is the implementation of the Presidential Drone Deal Initiative. The Ukrainian delegation held meetings with representatives of the Pentagon and the U.S. Congress to deepen cooperation and modernize drone platforms.
The main goal of the Ukrainian team's visit is technical negotiations to prepare for signing an agreement on the purchase of Ukrainian drones. We also focused on the PURL mechanism, financing the procurement of American weapons and ammunition, using funds from European partners. Rustem Umerov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, on Facebook.
Washington and Kiev are discussing the supply of long-range weapon systems, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
We spoke with the United States. We are very thankful to President Trump for this dialogue. Last time we had very good meeting, very productive dialogue, and we spoke about long-range missiles, long-range weapon. We spoke about it, so we will see. Everything depends on his decision.
The United States expects greater financial activity from Europe in supporting Ukraine, stated Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. European partners, particularly Warsaw, should invest more in strengthening Kiev's defense and NATO's eastern flank, he believes. At the Copenhagen summit, he discussed with allies the financing of American military equipment supplies for Ukraine's defense forces. He emphasized that Poland is the country that, above all, must ensure Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russia.
As you understand, these are difficult topics. But as the Prime Minister of Poland, I feel some satisfaction that the Polish perspective on the importance of protecting the eastern flank has now become a shared European position. No one any longer disputes the fact that our eastern border with Russia and Belarus is the border of all Europe, all of NATO, and that everyone must take responsibility, including financial and organizational, for its protection.
The drone wall must become Europe's shield against Russian provocations. The president of Ukraine called on all European countries to join this initiative, because if Russia decides to attack Poland with drones or violate the airspace of northern European states, it means it could happen anywhere. Europe needs rapid and effective response forces that know how to counter drones effectively, and Ukraine is ready to help its partners create them.
Today, their strategy is simple: to divide Europe, ignite arguments, and prevent us from finding common ground. And I believe we must do in the exact opposite way of what Russia expects. We must act together, and we must act with strengths. First, our guys are already here in Denmark, and there are experienced Ukrainians who know how to detect and shoot down attack drones, and they have already begun deploying their mission. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine.
Increasing military aid to Kiev and intensifying sanctions pressure on Moscow will be key to Ukraine's victory, believes French President Emmanuel Macron. He called on allies to increase pressure on Russia's shadow fleet, the aggressor country's main tool for bypassing restrictions.
30 to 40% of the war effort is financed through the revenues of the shadow fleet. It represents more than 30 billion euros. So it's extremely important to increase the pressure on this shadow fleet because it will clearly reduce the capacity to finance this war effort for Russia. So we put a series of sanctions on them I mean, on the boats and on the insurance companies, harbors, and so on. But now we have clearly a way to increase the pressure by coordinating a holistic approach on this shadow fleet.
The oil trade from Russia must be stopped. Volodymyr Zelenskyy called for the urgent adoption of the EU's 19th sanctions package against Moscow. Additional restrictions are needed against the captains and crews of shadow fleet vessels and company owners, the president of Ukraine believes. The possibility of sanctions against Russian oil terminals and the rest of the aggressor country's fuel infrastructure should also be considered. Europe must support the U.S. president's call and completely abandon Russian oil purchases. The head of state is convinced. Going against Washington is short-sighted, and Hungary, which does not intend to stop importing Russian energy, needs to realize this clearly. Reported by Victoria Chistyukina, UATV News.
It was Henry Keane. We are UATV. Thank you for standing with Ukraine. Please subscribe so as to stay tuned to what is happening in the world shown from the Ukrainian perspective to you. Thank you. Goodbye.